what they want me to do to you, it's not gonna be pleasant.
You duck and cover.
Whatever killed Teddy, Phil, and Susie, it came after us again last night in the cemetery.
You duck and cover.
You'll have to go on record with the truth.
The truth is, I ain't do nothing to those kids. What the hell do you have us chasing?
Duck, cover, duck, cover, duck, cover, duck, cover, duck, cover, duck, cover.
Here with Tully Television, I want to thank all of you for stopping by, liking, commenting, hopefully sharing. It helps us with the algorithm, and only together can we go straight to the moon, baby. But today we're going to be getting into It, Welcome to Derry, Episode 3 review. And I will say, it's really starting to pick up. It was 10 days since the last episode, because they released episode 2 during Halloween. You know, why not, right? Celebrate a little bit, being Stephen King is one of the kings of horror, modern horror anyway. But let's get into the cast real quick. We have Hovan Adepo, Adepo, I'm sorry if I don't know how to pronounce that, as Major Leroy Hanlon. His wife, Taylor Page, is Charlotte Hanlon. James Reamer as General Francis Shaw. Amanda Christine as Ronnie. Clara Stack as Lily. Chris Chalk as Dick Halloran. I know last review I got a little confused between the names of Hanlon and Halloran, similar last names, but Dick Halloran is the one with the shining power. That was also the character in his older form in the movie The Shining. We have Blake Cameron James as Will Hanlon, the major's son. Ariane Cartier as Rich. Violet Sutherland as Rose. I'll get into her character as we go on. Now, we initially start off in 1908, where Francis, and we find out this is the child version of the General Francis Shaw. Francis had met Rose after his father and him went to the fair. At the fair, Francis was curious about their oddity tent, so if you will. Back in the day, and I don't know if they really do this these days because of acceptance and all of this stuff that comes with today's society. But back in the day, there used to be carnivals that would have sideshow freaks, so to speak. Bearded ladies, sword swallowers, world's fattest men, because back in the day, 300-pound men really weren't that, it wasn't a big thing. Where in America, a lot of people are overweight. I'm overweight, so I'm not making fun of anybody. I'm just saying that was the state of the world back then. These type of weird things, where you wouldn't normally see these things. Siamese twins sometimes would be part of the show, So Francis goes in, because there's someone out there. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right up, step right up. Check out our miscreants from God's creation or whatever, right? And he goes in, and it's kind of, for Francis, being such a young child, he's not, probably seen too much yet. And he comes across this one old man sitting in the dark, and he's like, come, son, come over here and let me take a look at you. And as he gets closer, the old man lights a match, and one of his eyes is missing completely out of his head, which is jarring for Francis, and he runs out and comes across his father. The father notices where he's coming out of. He was like, "Oh, stop being a sissy," or something like that, Francis. I'm telling you, some of these old sayings, don't be a sissy. I never got that phrase, the sissy, because I had an Aunt Sissy, and she wasn't a fraidy cat. Her real name was Mercedes. It was my grandmother's sister, my great aunt, I guess, my great aunt Sissy. But so the father I told him he won him a slingshot. As they were going home, they ran down. The car broke down a little bit. The father was trying to fix it. Francis bought a container of water from these Native American kids on the side of the road, and one of them happened to be the character Rose that he met. And being he was a little short for the amount of water, he gave Rose her slingshot. And that started a friendship between Rose and Francis, where they would meet up and play a lot and, grow a bond. It's kind of like one of your first little girlfriend, boyfriend type of things, but it's like innocent. You don't know what to do at that age. Even if you were calling each other boyfriend and girlfriend, it's just like, hey, boyfriend, And they weren't referring to themselves as that. It's just one of those things where it's one of those first love type of things or first infatuations that's very innocent. You're hanging out with someone who's a girl that you may find cute and vice versa. And so they had themselves a nice little friendship. And one day they were playing around and Francis happened to overrun because they were chasing each other or whatever, and Francis ran into the woods, and you hear Rose go, no, Francis, stop, and he ran so deep in there that he got a little lost, and the entity that we know as Pennywise started feeding on his fears, and started chasing him in the form of the old man with the missing eye, because again, Pennywise isn't the end-all be-all image that we see when the it entity comes chasing us. It just chooses that form mainly for children, because one of our first fears for most children, for most people, is clowns. And so, but in this case, the entity came to him as the old man with the missing eye. Now, at that same fair, we do see shades of Pennywise here and there in the fair, because that's where its entity gained the inspiration to become it later on in life, so to speak. So finally, he starts running, and he gets close to the edge of the woods to get back out to the clearing, and Rose uses the slingshot to save Francis. And he asks, what is that? What the hell happened? And she's like, we don't know what it is. We just know not to go there anymore. And at one point we see Rose and her reservation are having a meeting about all the digging that's going around by the government there. And they're trying to put an injunction in to stop it, because again, they know what's in there. They're trying not to unearth the evil. It's already contained as much as they can. They don't want to unearth any more of it. But Francis is now the general, and he's the one leading the expedition on this area. And when Francis comes and talks to Rose, we get a very interesting thing happen between them, an interesting interaction. Because when Francis finally comes to Rose as adults, he's like, it's not that I didn't want to remember you, but I didn't remember you until I got this paper about stopping the digging, and then I remembered everything else. And why did that happen? And she explains, well, it's a funny thing, this town. It makes you kind of do that. And she kind of mentioned that we see a flashback of her saying that to him as children, where he's like, I'll never forget you, and this and that. And she's like, unfortunately, you will when you leave here. So, another part of the lore of Derry, if you will, is that when you leave Derry, as a child, I guess, even maybe it's more like, I don't know, it depends on the age, I guess. Maybe it doesn't. But when you leave that area for an extended amount of time, you will have a vague recollection of being somewhere, but not remember anything that was surrounding that time in that area. So that is a good way of saying this is why some of these urban legends, some of these things that happen in Derry aren't known across lines, state lines, county lines, whatever. In one of the early episodes, we even hear someone say, "This ain't America. This is Derry." And so it's like this town in Maine is its own separate reality within the reality of America. It's wild, okay? Now, so Francis kind of lies to Rose about the true purpose of the dig sites, all right? Now, what we get is Major Hanlon being asked to pilot Dick Halloran around in the sky because the general feels like he is at the limit of what Dick can do just by pointing at signs on the map. Oh, check this area. Check that area. Check this. You know, he needs him up in the air, traveling over around the area, and he's going to use his shining to get an idea of where to dig next. So it's up to the Major. This is why the Major is such a major part of the story and mission, because he's the best pilot. And we find out later on. Well, hold on. So they're flying Dick around, and neither the Major or the other co-pilot are knowing what's going on fully. And he starts doing the powers, and he connects with the entity, it. And he's in its lair. And it is, we see him just through the glowing eyes. Who are you? What are you? Because this must be the first time a human was able to see him without him making his presence known, to be able to kind of get into his mind, so to speak. And we see what the layer looks like, and it's all these people that were there that were taken by it. And it scares Dick so much that he's not realizing that he's about to jump off this helicopter until Leroy Hanlon saves him. And as they land, because he's calling to the base too, because he couldn't get Dick's attention. And so they finally land, and Dick goes to Leroy's house for dinner, meeting his wife Charlotte and stuff like that. And they talk a little bit, and you can tell that Dick is using his shining powers because he asked the wife if there's anything she misses. They get into talking about how she was part of the movement, so to speak. And as she mentions how Leroy is trying to advance his career in the military. And Dick puts it in a very interesting way because he understands her plight on wanting to be a better community member so everyone can be equal, right? But at that time, to try to advance your career as a black man in America during that time is very difficult too, especially when you have a wife that may be considered a rebel rouser, right? And so he kind of put it to her too, like, try to be a little understanding of his plight also. And so when they are outside after dinner having a smoke, Leroy acknowledges that he knows now Dick is a mind reader, so to speak, and he was there the night of the attack that he was attacked. He wasn't the one with the lead pipe that was hitting him, but he was there reading his mind during the attack and realizing Leroy doesn't have any fear at all. He analyzes what's going on and is trying to find a solution, but there's no fear. And he was like, that's very rare. And I'm not here to try, more here to be your friend than anything else. Even though that happened and I was involved, I want you as my ally. Okay? And that's where kind of that ends a little bit for that part of the story. And then finally the kids, we got Lily telling Ronnie she is sorry for not telling the truth because she's afraid of being locked away in the mental institution. But let's be for real. Because of her past, even before the second trip to the mental institution, she would still be not trusted because of the initial time she went to the mental institution after her father's death. So even if she was to come out and tell the truth, no one's going to believe her. I mean, let's be for real. A flying demon baby came out of the movie screen from a friend that is missing, that is in the movie. Like, okay. So the plan is to try to take a picture. So Lily and Ronnie convince Will and Rich, one of our newer characters that came in, as the new Losers Club. But I'm not going to call them the Losers Club. I'm going to call them the Rotten Luck Club, all right? And Rich tells the group about this. He's basically describing like a seance or something to call forth these entities, and he heard it through like his cousins and his uncle and stuff like that. It's something that they do in the Cuban community, I guess, like that, people that try to, call upon these entities, right? And he was saying how it's supposed to be in a cemetery and with candles, and so they go and attempt to do that, right? And with the camera. And at first it doesn't seem like it works until then it works. And they are riding that bike through the cemetery and they are being attacked. And Will finally, Will gets separated from the other three. And there was a couple pictures that were able to be taken. They went to school to try to develop those pictures. That was the plan. But as they get separated, they wasn't sure what was going to happen with Will. And Will finally winds up showing up because he was the last one to escape the cemetery. And as they go to school, sneak in, they develop some of these pictures. And they're pretty excited because they seem to have gotten something. on camera. And the last scene is them looking at an image and wondering what it is until we, the audience, realize that it's the image of Pennywise, so to speak, in the picture. And that's where it ends, okay? So we are probably going to see Pennywise soon in that form, but we're probably going to still get more backstory to the entity, okay? Through probably the story of Francis and through other things that they're going to add on throughout the series. I will say that this was, I know I kind of complained about some of the children actors last review here, but I feel like the actress who plays Lily did a better job. I like that her the friend Marge, who's about being popular, I'm glad she wasn't in this episode, because it's more her that's annoying to me, I guess. Maybe it's more of these characters are annoying and they're supposed to be annoying, and maybe that's why it's throwing me off. But I feel like Lily and Ronnie did a better job, and even Will and Rich, I think, did good jobs too in this particular episode. So I'm going to ease up on that complaint a little bit more now. Feeling like maybe they're starting to get into the rhythm of their characters, or at least with Lily and Ronnie. It was more Lily, but it seems like she's more getting into the rhythm of her character and everything. In my view, you know what I mean? Doesn't mean she's a bad actress. I just felt like there's just something that I wasn't connecting to in the first 2 episodes, but I seem to be connecting a little bit more to her character in this episode. I do like Ronnie's character. Will and Rich, I think, are good characters too. And so it's going to be now fun to see that new group of friends proceed and see how they grow and interact with each other. I will say that this episode was, to me, I would probably say it's like tied with the first episode as far as my favorite so far, and that episode 2 is kind of the last. But this show overall is good. It's not that there's bad episodes. It's just episode 3 and 1 or more so far my favorite. And I think that you'd like this show. It's certainly adding a lot of lore to a lot of stuff in the Stephen King universe. I think that you'll enjoy yourself here. So far, I'm gonna give this series like an 7.5, 8 out of 10. I think that it's a pretty solid series so far. We got about 5 more episodes to go. So we'll see how it goes. Is this going to be a standalone season? I don't know. Only time will tell. Give me your thoughts down below of this series, of this episode. And until next time, peace, Snookums.